Hello and welcome to this interview series ahead of Cloud and Cybersecurity Expo on the 12th and 13th of March at XL London. I'm Rebecca Ruffindale, tech reporter at Techerati, and today my guest is Sudarshan Ratnavelu, former Head of Cybersecurity at Lloyds Banking Group. Sudarshan will appear at Cloud and Cybersecurity Expo, but today we will be talking about 3 inventions or innovations that have impacted their life. So welcome to this interview series. How are you doing this morning?
I'm really well, thank you, Rebecca. How are you?
Very well, thank you. I understand you've prepared 3 inventions for us. So can you perhaps tell us a little bit about your first invention and why have you selected this?
Certainly. My first invention that I've chosen is the espresso machine. I'm a big coffee fan, and I love that in millions of people's homes, there's a device that they don't have to think about. It just works reliably every morning for them and helps them get through the morning.
Great selection. I think that's something that we can all relate to. And so, as you've mentioned, the espresso machine has kind of been revolutionizing coffee culture for centuries. And as someone leading high pressure initiatives in cybersecurity, do you see parallels between the precision required in crafting the perfect espresso and implementing effective security strategies?
Good question. Yes, is the short answer. I think there's no one correct way of making a good coffee. You have to know what your customer wants. So the parallel with security is, what is the organization trying to achieve? Do they ultimately want security in the form of a shot of espresso? Do they want a latte, or do they want a cappuccino? And there's the organic nature of it. Who are the people you're working with? What's the type of beans that you're putting into the machine, and how do you need to grind them? So even though it's classified as just a coffee, I think every organization has their own preference, and understanding the organization and what they're trying to get out of security is much like finding out what type of coffee they prefer first thing in the morning.
This machine, the espresso machine, it's so intricate, built for ease of use for consumers. How do you approach designing or advocating for security solutions that are equally user-friendly yet effective?
A really popular brand of espresso machine is the Nespresso, and it's wonderful because people don't have to understand how to grind beans and adjust various settings like pressure. You literally pop the capsule in, press a single button, and it measures out the right amount of hot water at the right pressure for you, with the right amount of coffee ground at the right level of fineness. And for me, that is like low friction security. People know they need it, but wouldn't it be great if you could just press a single button and not have to think about that? And I guess my analogy there is, I think an espresso machine is much like low friction security.
Yeah. So what, just as a personal note, what kind of espresso machine do you use?
I use a Gaggia Classic because I like to play around with as many settings as possible and change parts out.
So moving on, coffee often fuels productivity. Is there a ritual or a habit tied to your espresso machine that helps you stay focused, tackling the complex challenges of modern cybersecurity? Is it the switching out of parts that you've just kind of mentioned to me just now?
For me, it's the morning ritual. It's the part of the morning when I am not thinking about what's in my inbox or what meetings I have in the day, and my family know to leave me alone for about 3 minutes. And I'm just focused on dialing in the machine, pulling the best shot of espresso possible, and enjoying it. And it just clears my head, ready for the day. And sometimes when I've already got some thoughts about what I need to do that day, it just gives me a little bit of thinking space, and I sometimes come away with a little light bulb moment.
So thank you so much for sharing your first invention. Now, what is your second one and why have you chosen that?
The second one is the aeroplane, and I do love travel. I like to be sustainable, but when I do take a plane, it just reminds me of how the world has been made smaller by this invention that's been around for just over 100 years.
It's quite a marvel how far it's developed. And so the aeroplane revolutionized global connectivity, as you've mentioned. How has the evolution of global networks influenced your approach to safeguarding critical assets in this very hyper-connected world?
Before airplanes, I think if you wanted to invade another country, it would take much longer and ships would have to travel. With modern airfare and modern airplanes, the world is much smaller. And I think with everything being connected to the internet, and I'm talking more than just computers, I'm talking about IoT and OT as well. The world is much smaller, but also it's possible to have a single misconfiguration, particularly in a cloud-hosted environment, that results in company secrets being shared with the whole world. So then I think about zero trust network architecture and how you really need to acknowledge that you don't really have a solid border anymore. People are flying in and out of your organization, you're flying in and out of your providers' organizations. And some of those tenets of ZTNA lend themselves quite well in that analogy where you've got identity providers, people issuing your passports and your visas. Do you have the right access for that country that you're trying to visit? And once you think that you're no longer an island, but you need to have that high level of interconnectedness, then you can start adjusting your security program accordingly.
Cybersecurity, like aviation, requires vigilance to ensure safety. Are there any lessons we can draw from aviation's advancements in safety protocols to improve resilience in cybersecurity?
Yes, I think when aviation security fails, everybody hears about it and it makes international headlines, which is why airplane manufacturers tend to have multiple levels of safety built through multiple levels of redundancy to try and minimize the likelihood of that happening. But also, something that's probably a bit more relatable to everyone is at an airport, there's a lot of security at an airport, and we've all had that experience of being stuck in the queue for security and having a very impersonal experience where you're getting poked and prodded and you put all your travel things into 100 mil containers. And by contrast, airports are moving now towards the next generation of full body scanners so that we don't have to empty all of our pockets, takes our belts off. And again, that's a great example of lower friction when it comes to security.
And the invention of the aeroplane required visionaries to think beyond the existing limits of transportation. How important is visionary thinking and staying ahead of emerging cyber threats? And can you share an example where this was key in your role?
I'll do my best. So I think when they invented the airplane, a lot of people must have been wondering what these two gentlemen were doing. It's the stuff of dreams, people flying, but they made it happen. And I've been lucky enough in my role to be presented with relatively large challenges, including how do we achieve continuous compliance for a massive FTSE 100 organization across both our disparate cloud environments as well as on-premise. And rather than pulling together lots of different point solutions, I said, well, let's try and do this from the ground up strategically using our own tooling. And we managed to leapfrog most of our competitors to come up with a strategic tooling that we developed ourselves in-house.
And just a little side note from this, these emerging cyber threats that we're encountering more and more so, and it's becoming more and more public knowledge as we become ever more interconnected. Is there anything you see on the horizons that people should particularly be aware of that you can recall at all?
I think everyone's talking about artificial intelligence, and businesses, particularly in 2025, need to identify how they're going to use artificial intelligence. I think just saying let's not use it is not going to help you, but having a strategy from the top of the organization to make sure that you're using it safely and ethically, knowing that there may be bias in a particular LLM, and providing guidance to employees so that you don't have data being exfiltrated and being used to train models. I think that's going to be a key thing for organizations that have not yet addressed that this year.
Thank you so much for that insight. And moving on to your final invention, what was it you'd like to share with us?
The Global Positioning System, GPS.
And why have you selected that invention?
I just think it's great that now most people around the world, everyone who's got a smartphone is holding a GPS device, and nobody thinks twice about the accuracy being down to 1 meter. And it's something which started off with government and military in mind, and over decades it's moved to ships and airplanes to you and me. And I just love to see how technology has trickled down.
That's so true. I often do think about how once upon a time these technologies would have been so advanced that we shielded from the public, and now, as you say, they're so common that we disregard them in the phone. And so this technology reshaped navigation and precision across industries. How do you leverage the principles of constant tracking and adaptability from GPS technology in managing enterprise-wide security programs?
I've got a friend who works in maritime safety, and it's all underpinned by GPS. And so they can track ships at sea and identify when a ship is in distress, and they save lives on a weekly basis. And I think the analogy here is in IT, we're drowning in signals and data. We have so much of it, and we need to be able to identify exactly what we need to focus on. And I think if you speak to any SOC analyst, they will tell you that they see so many signals, and having the mechanism and the methodology to be able to identify what you need to focus on, what you need to prioritize for the day, what you need to prioritize your security investment on is really important.
And just as GPS technology helps us stay on course, cybersecurity leaders guide businesses through regulatory and risk landscapes. How do you balance innovation and regulation, as you mentioned before with AI, for example, to keep organizations aligned with their goals?
I think there's a seesaw, and on one side of the seesaw you have innovation, and on the other side of the seesaw you have regulation. And we need both of these in healthy amounts. If you have one greater than the other, it's not going to be balanced. We have great opportunity with things like generative AI, and we also have governments specifying more requirements upon us, including, for example, DORA within the EU. And it's a good thing to have this regulation. It levels the playing field. It helps us trust other organizations and trust our supply chain. But we can't do regulation alone without having innovation, and we can't have innovation without having a framework to operate safely. So I think those two need to play well together.
Finally, when it comes to this, the creation of GPS required long-term vision and investment. How do you advocate for sustained focus and resources in cybersecurity initiatives, especially when the immediate results aren't always visible?
GPS wasn't created with someone thinking, I'm going to deliver this project in a year. It would have taken someone a lot of convincing power that they're going to scatter these satellites around the world several decades ago, and that anyone globally would be able to figure out where they are. And I think security leaders today need to have that longer term vision, which may extend beyond their tenure, but they need to identify what they stand for and what they're going to try and achieve to deliver security aligned to a business objective. And when you have that long-term arc, you can then put in place programs of work that will deliver discrete components of that and head in the direction that you need to go. But of course, with security changing ever faster, that strategy is going to change, and you have to also be willing to evolve your plan as the year goes on and the multiple year duration of your vision goes on.
Yeah, I completely agree. And is there anything particular that you worked on that you're particularly proud of, that has kind of embodied the things you were just talking about just now?
When I was working for a central government client, they were on a multi-year journey, and it was a case of helping them actually finish that multi-year journey, get those satellites into space, as it were. And I was really proud that we managed to do that, to deliver the UK side of a inter-European secure network to provide secure data across different agencies. And when you see a project that's been running for many years and you're able to get it through to completion securely, that's quite a career highlight.
And so thank you for sharing your chosen inventions, and they definitely highlight the precision, connectivity and navigational traits that resonate with your cybersecurity leadership. How do these technologies inspire or shape this leadership style?
I think all three of these technologies are things which are taken for granted. And as a security leader, I like to think of a day when security can just be taken for granted, and it's no longer something which board members and C-suite are up at night time worried about. and they just go, no, security is something we're no longer concerned about. Let's get back to innovation and profitability. So hopefully one day cybersecurity will be as straightforward as all these inventions, but for now, we have a long way to go.
Yes, always changing, ever changing. And to kind of wrap up with these inventions, each of these, the espresso machine, the aeroplane, and GPS, were developed in different centuries, reflecting evolving needs and technologies of their times. How do you think their varied timelines and enduring impact speak to the way innovation shapes our day-to-day lives over time? And what lessons can cybersecurity draw from this long arc of invention and adaptation?
I think each of these inventions, particularly the airplane and GPS, I think were game changers to the world, where people thought this was not possible previously. And I think we have to realize that they're going to continue to be inventions that shock and amaze us. And as cybersecurity professionals, we need to continue to apply our judgment based on the same principles we always have every time there's a new invention or innovation, to embrace it, but understand it and apply security accordingly to help business leverage it.
Fantastic. And finally, you're going to be at Cloud and Cybersecurity Expo in March at XL London as part of Tech Show London. What can attendees expect from you this year, and what can they learn at your session?
I believe I'll be on a panel talking about user-centric security, and I'd love to be able to talk about how it's more than just user awareness training, but you can really help shift security responsibility across the organization by helping the likes of developers realize how important their role is in securing what you're delivering. So I'd like to be able to delve really deep into that, if permitted.
I'm sure you'll be permitted. Thank you so much for your time today. I'm looking forward to seeing you in March for Cloud and Cybersecurity Expo.
It's been a pleasure, Rebecca. Thank you.